Ladies and gentlemen, we have to admit, as it was already stressed in the previous speeches, that during the last year, the situation has changed, and we have to admit the changes are not of a positive character. The global scale of terrorism threat in Africa, near Middle East and Central Asia are increasing, and Ukrainian crisis has become one more flashpoint of instability. Our principal position and independent position of the Russian Federation to regulate the situation regarding Ukraine was perceived by the United States and their allies and European Union as not allowed, and they are trying to cut Russia in size and in such a way exert political and economic pressure on our country. Militarization of Europe is increasing rapidly, and we are witnesses that the mechanisms of global and regional security today cease working. And we also have to admit that this is not an unexpected event. There are systematic problems of international security which began not a year or two ago, but in the beginning of 90s of the last century, after the break down of the Soviet Union and the system of bipolar system of world order was ruined. The United States considered themselves winners in this war, Cold War, and decided to redraw a map exclusively to their needs. Washington stopped considering the interests of other countries, and they made their own decisions, which state is a democratic state and which is the evil empire, who are fighters for freedom and who are terrorists and separatists. The Russian Federation is constantly striving to draw attention of the world community, and we always speak for such solving of these issues on the basis of the mutual respect of the interests of each other. This position witnesses about Russian position, and this is reflected in the new edition of military doctrine of the Russian Federation, which includes official views of our state to provide its military safety and defense. In December of 2014, in this new revised version began acting. These adjustments in military doctrine of the Russian Federation did not touch the general approach of our state and assessment of the processes which are going on in the world, and our military policy did not change at the major points. As before, we raising the issue that the existing architecture of international safety is being ignored by certain countries, and NATO countries infrastructures are coming closer to Russian borders. We all know that the facts are contrary to the attempts of North Atlantic Alliance. They state that their efforts are mostly for defensive purposes. But as we see, in 1999, the number of members of the NATO, there were 12 members, and during the period of the Cold War, the number increased by only 4 countries. Today, NATO is going further to the east, and such countries as Montenegro, Macedonia, Bosnia, and Herzegovina are planning to become NATO members. The economic and military opportunities of young NATO candidates do not comply with those criteria of membership in this organization. Their inclusion to the bloc is considered a means of creating the one and not divided Europe. And even considering the political aspect of NATO, we have to assess the situation not only from the strategic point of view, and we observe the negative influence of this situation towards the military safety of Russia. It is important to notice that alliance is devoting a great deal of attention to non-bloc countries. These provide a special format of cooperation of such countries. With such countries, some of these countries are post-Soviet states like Georgia, Moldavia, or Ukraine. In the framework of this initiative, they are planning to strengthen armed forces, have joint military exercises, combat training, and other measures. This privileged partnership is also concerning the bordering countries with Russia, such as Georgia and Finland, and also Sweden. In the framework of this project, they have agreed about utilization of Finnish and Swedish infrastructure for providing the troops shifts to the north of Europe. And we would like to emphasize that these attempts are getting more noticeable, and under the pretense of the Ukrainian crisis, NATO intensified its activity. And we see that all the decisions which were adopted in NATO Council in September of 2014 except for agreements of the defense spends and regulating the situation in Afghanistan, they have adopted a number of steps to increase the military capabilities of NATO. Brussels confirmed the decision of ceasing the civil and military cooperation with Moscow until the complete reconciliation in Ukraine. The activity of NATO we can see on this slide, and the activity of NATO increased their activity. For example, to compare with 2013, the number of Navy vessels of non-Black Sea states to the Black Sea increased by 3 times. Flights of the aircrafts, tactical aircrafts, increased by 2 times. The number of military exercises increased by practically 1.8 times. And we see the change in the direction of training and combat training of NATO United Armed Forces. They now give the priority to solving the tasks during the military actions with a counterpart which we can easily see the Russian Federation. On Wales Summit of 2014, the plan of the actions of NATO to increase the readiness for reacting the rapid deployment forces are given the priority in this sense. And it also provides the consistent limitation, the constant presence of NATO forces in Eastern Europe, regrouping the forces on the territories of Eastern European and Baltic members of the alliance, increasing the military equipment and material means. So we see that these measures of NATO are increasing their military capabilities and are not of a defensive character. Deployment of American global system, anti-missile system, is viewed by us as a next step for the United States to unmount the system of international security which is today working, and they're striving to military domination. Declaring the necessity of the defense of the territory of the United States, the Americans in 2002 went out of the treaty of anti-missile treaty as of 1972. For over the latest 4 years, complexes of anti-missile systems appeared on our western, eastern, and southern borders. Such complexes as Aegis fulfill the tasks in Mediterranean and Black Seas, Asia-Pacific area are being deployed in Europe, Asia-Pacific, and are called to intercept the missiles at early, every middle, and final segments of flights of missiles. It is important to notice that Aegis complexes have significant anti-satellite potential. Except for non-Russian direction, we also suspect the collectiveness of global system of anti-missile security and its regional segments. The final solution, the final decision which members of NATO are to be defended from the missile threat, Washington will make on their own. And it shows that to compensate anti-Russian potential of global anti-missile system, Russia has to undertake corresponding military and technical measures. Moreover, the deployment of anti-missiles means is supported with breaking the clauses of one of the most important treaties, which provides the strategic stability in Europe.
So we speak about complexes deployed in Poland, which allow, besides standard 3 rockets, cruise missile Tomahawk may be used. Take into account that anti-missile vessels of American Navy are fitted with similar launching devices. The zone of destruction by cruise vessels having ground and naval basement may be covered, may reach all Russian territory. And concept of global strike is very dangerous. It is well known that in the framework of this concept, non-nuclear, high-precision means of global reach are developed. Despite significant financial expenditures and technical complications, works continue. So for this reason, we may know it's clear that non-nuclear means of global strike may become a reality in the nearest future. Implementation of plans to develop anti-missile defense may create danger to violate strategical nuclear balance, which till now balance of the world stability. All this forum reasons to take adequate response measures by Russia. Besides problems related to dangers violating strategic balance on forces, new sources of instability appears near the Russian borders. Striving to put Russia in place, moreover, becomes the interest of Russia and its partners in NATO to create crisis situation in areas close to Russian borders and regions. How such a situation formed, we have spoken much about previous conference, I mean color revolutions. Technology of this revolution became standard. Manipulation from outside of protest potential of population with use of informational potential in conjunction with political, economical, humanitarian and other non-military measures. As known, scenario of military for coup d'etat in the form of color revolutions in post-Soviet space were successfully implemented in Ukraine, Georgia and Moldavia. As the result, forces having mainly pro-Western and anti-Russian orientation were built in power. So, for example, radicals and Russophobes coming to power in Ukraine justified activity on neo-fascist organization. The main content of the Ukrainian state policy became accusation Russia in all own problems and prosecution of Russian-speaking population. Ukrainian leaders try to pacify population of Donbass who expressed non-trust to new Russophobe policy. In fact, in Ukraine we have a civil war where thousands of people became victims. It is difficult to predict how will it end. We do not know what kind of guidance are given to Ukrainian forces from Western curators and where may be forwarded next aggression of Kiev in future. But there is certain threat to Russia. It is sufficient to remember attack made in 2008 by Georgian military forces on Russian peacekeepers in southern Ossetia under order of Georgian President Saakashvili, who is now the chancellor to Ukrainian President Poroshenko. Speaking about dangers to the Russian Federation related to destabilization of situation near Russian borders, we have to pay all attention to so-called freezing conflicts on post-Soviet space. After disintegration of the Soviet Union during more than 20 years, relation between Moldavia and non-recognized Pridnestrovia Republic, Georgia with republics of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, Armenia and Azerbaijan regarding status of Nagorno-Karabakh autonomy. On basis of sharpening relations between Russian Federation, US and Europe, it is possible that defreezing of such conflicts may take place, which may threaten happening new conflicts near our boundaries. Powers of Georgia today declare about the absence of intentions to bring back Abkhazia and Ossetia into government. However, acknowledgement of such republics by Russia and establishing interstate relations is declared by Tbilisi as attempt to annexate part of Georgian territory. Recently, Kishinev speak about new aggression of Russia. This all help increase of tension in these regions and anticipate taking from our side appropriate measures. Talking about modern militaries and threats to Russian Federation, we have to speak about global terrorism as well. First of all, the alarm is given by scale and rate of such threats. If in 60s and 70s of last century, all over the world, number of members of different extremist organizations, according to different evaluations, varied about 2,000 people. Then in 90s, this figure went up to 50,000, and nowadays it is more than 150,000 people. At present, organization forms of terrorism continue developing. Terrorism, singular terrorism are in the past. Now networks are very wide and also organizations with the signs of the state. As an example may be Islamic State of Iraq and Levanta, which appeared on territory of Iraq, Lebanon and Afghanistan. On basis of spreading ideas of radical Islam, permanent number of IGIL states continue growing, where there are representatives of different countries, including citizens of US and European countries. And among them, there are people with having Russian citizenship. It should not necessarily explain that obtaining ideological preparation and military combat, such people coming back to motherland will spread terrorism threat all over the world. Attempts taken by coalition to fight Islamic State through making airstrikes do not bring tangible results. Potential of formation of Kurds and Iraqi forces are not sufficient to solve this task. In this view, Washington and Brussels, jointly with the special forces of a number of Arab countries, again promote a project to prepare new formations using so-called moderate Islamists. At the same time, and attempts to provide own interests by US and NATO do not think about the way where from such terrorism empires appear. Al-Qaeda did not appear by itself. This organization appeared from Mujahideen fighting with limited contingent of Soviet forces in Afghanistan using money by the US and allies. Then Islamic State were considered to be good militants well paid by the West. But nowadays they went out of control and represent danger not only to those against whom they were hired, but also against their own employees. And these countries do not think about countries who sell cheap weapons and buy cheap counterfeit contraband oil, although all this may come again themselves, and this become more and more obvious. As you see, evaluation of modern military threats and challenges to the Russian Federation are quite objective and well justified. Modern challenges to security of our state do not remain without adequate response. Measures taken by us providing security of the state. First of all, well-planned development of armed forces of the Russian Federation. Strategic nuclear forces has maintained at the level allowing solve issues of nuclear deterrence, new rocket complexes able efficiently overpass many echelons of anti-missile defense, fleet of aircraft carrying missiles continue renewing. We continue improving space defense of the Russian Federation, and to protect the integrity and intactness of Russia, we deploy self-sufficient grouping of the works in Crimea. In the framework of long-term agreements with Armenia, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Southern Ossetia, we increase potential of forces and military bases located there. They became warranties of strategical stability in these regions. Implementing plans to renewing armament using new perspective samples of military equipment and improve the military combat readiness. Results of maneuvers and unexpected checks show that our military forces are able to solve the tasks given to them at any time and under any conditions. At the same time, we very well understand that majority of modern problems of military security of Russia are related not only to our state. They bear multilateral character and acquire regional and even global scale, and their solution may not depend only on efforts taken by our country. It is obvious that security of Russia may not be considered outside problems of world security. So for this reason, it is necessary not only be ready to dialogues on these topics, but also understand all participants of international relations, their importance for solving this task. Only constructive, equal cooperation in this area may warrant security of all countries, and we are ready for such cooperation. But unfortunately, during the last several years, we have to acknowledge that the world is becoming less secure, and our common forces. We think that this negative tendency will be overcome. Thank you for your attention.